going. All right, I'm here today with Melinda Tankard Reist. Is that right?
That's it.
All right, I'm really happy to be talking, Melinda. Thank you so much. I feel very privileged to speak to someone like yourself. I'm just going to let the viewers and listeners, while I get my reading glasses on, let them know who you are in case they're not familiar with your work. So, of course, your website at www.melindatankardsreist.com. Melinda is an author, speaker, media commentator, blogger, and advocate for women and girls. She's best known for her work addressing sexualization, objectification, the harms of pornography, sexual exploitation, trafficking, and violence against women. Melinda is the author or editor of 6 books, including Getting Real, Challenging the Sexualization of Girls, Big Porn Incorporated, Exposing the Harms of Global Pornography Industry, and Prostitution Narratives, Stories of Survival in the Sex Trade. An opinion writer, Melinda has appeared on ABC's Q&A and the Gruen Sessions, as well as many other TV and radio programs. Melinda is co-founder and movement director of the grassroots campaigning movement collective Shout for a Free World of Sexploitation, exposing corporations, advertisers, and marketers who objectify women and sexualize girls to sell products and services. An ambassador for World Vision Australia, Compassion Australia, Hagar New Zealand, and the youth mentoring body, the Raise Foundation. Melinda is also senior lecturer in the Center for Culture and Ethics at Notre Dame University in Sydney. Melinda is named in Who's Who of Australian Women and the World Who's Who of Women. Wow, quite the resume. So thank you again for doing this. And I just want to mention the book that Big Porn Incorporated, for the viewers. This is what it looks like. And I have to say, this is, I just pulled this off the shelf again, and this is an incredible body of work for some real heavyweight academics based on some really, really solid research. And it goes through, the first part is about pornography cultures, sexualization of childhood, rape culture, peer-to-peer porn, other chapters. The second one talks about the industry itself. Chapter 3 is dedicated to the harm of children. Part 4, porn and the state, and part 5 is called Resisting Big Porn Incorporated. So I really recommend that. This was a real eye-opener and a game changer for me in understanding the big picture about porn. So I really recommend everyone check out Melinda's website and buy this book and read it, please. Okay, so Melinda, I'm interested in discussing your experience as mostly as a speaker. You wear a lot of hats, and I want to focus today on your experience as a speaker and an educator, and talk about how what I call, in my talks, I call this the unprecedented situation of our culture. And it's this: never before in the history of the human race have so many people had so much access to so much hardcore sexual material. Yes. And to say this has never existed in the history of the world is a fact. Mm-hmm. So what does this mean? So I'm interested, Melinda, in your stories and your experience and your professional take on how access to porn is affecting youth. What's going on with teenagers in terms of sexting, texting, using apps like Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram? What's revenge porn? What's sextortion? Like, I mean, some of these words didn't even exist, like sexting didn't even exist 10 years ago, or sextortion. I actually just came across that one this week. The sexualized forms of communication among teens and youth, the pressures they're facing, and how porn has shaped their expectations and understanding of sex. So I know I just threw a lot at you, but but I know you can do this in your sleep because you have so much experience with this. So Melinda, let's just give me an idea of how many talks have you actually done over the years?
I haven't got an exact count, Paul, but I would say in the last decade, I've addressed thousands of young people around Australia and some overseas as well. And in that time, I've seen this issue get worse. I've seen the exposure get worse. I've seen even younger children now talking about their exposure to pornography. I believe we're engaging in a never before seen experiment on the healthy sexual development of our young people. And we have to recognize this if we're going to help our young people aspire to healthy, respect-based, intimate relationships in the future. Because right now, the sex education they're receiving from porn is not going to help them to achieve that. In fact, quite the opposite.
Okay, so that's great. I want to come back to that. So when a school brings you in and
Yes.
and it's middle school in Australia, so that would be like our grades 6, 7, 8, I think, and then it would be high school 10, 9 to 12.
Yeah, roughly that, yes. But I'm also even doing primary now. So what we would call grades 5 and 6, the last 2 years of primary school before young people go to secondary school,
Okay.
which is deeply disturbing to me that I have to address them so young.
Yeah, well, the more you get into this, the more disturbing it can become for sure. So when a school asks you to come, what's the message that they want you to bring? Like, why are they bringing you in? And is it, I've seen, and viewers can watch Melinda's talk on YouTube. It seems like they pack out the auditorium for you. And they're all the kids in those grades are there to just hear you speak for what, a couple hours?
Yeah, yes, I'm very grateful for those opportunities that schools give me, Paul. What the schools are wanting me to do is to help their students to navigate a sexed up world, to navigate a hypersexualized landscape. Let's face it, they're growing up in porn land. They're growing up in porn culture, and that is shaping their attitudes, and that's then shaping their behaviors. And schools are seeing the impact on this, as are parents, as is anyone who's alive and chooses to recognize what's going on. So they're wanting me to help unpack what I call porn culture, help young people see the impacts of that culture on them, also to bring in global research on the subject. So this is not just my opinion. The global research testifies now to the detrimental impacts on porn in terms of distorting ideas about sexuality, warping developing sexual templates at a very critical time in a child's development. And then they especially want me to empower young people to resist porn scripts, to resist the dictates of the porn industry about what sexuality is, and to see that this is actually a form of indoctrination. It's a form of propaganda, and you're not going to learn about healthy sexuality. You're not going to have healthy sexual relationships when pornography is your formative, primary, tragically, sex educator, because it gives a hollow understanding of sexuality and true intimacy. And the themes are increasingly around domination and submission and coercion and the reinforcement of rape myths and the reinforcement of racist tropes. Some of the worst content I've seen is related to the treatment of Black women and Jewish women, for example. And we've examined all of that in a global campaign against Pornhub.
Right.
And so that's what the schools want me to do, you know, why it's harmful to you and what you can do about it. And especially for girls, how they can be empowered to say no. Like a common response after my talks to girls is we're allowed to say no and not feel bad about it. Some girls have said to me, we didn't even know we were allowed to say no, which is an absolute tragedy.
Where are the parents? You know, like, I don't know, maybe we just took a big tangent here, but I'm like, what kid just grows up and gets to the age that you meet them? And Melinda is the first adult that tells them they can say no. Like, I'm just shaking my head going, where did we fail her?
That's an absolute tragedy. Look, I think
Yeah.
some parents have found we can't compete. I've got 4 children. How do we compete with a global industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is targeting our children with porn, deliberately dropping porn into the feeds, especially of boys, deliberately finding our children? I mean, the porn industry has set up entire pornographic websites based on children's favorite cartoon characters. Literally the titles from
Yeah.
Disney characters, Disney movies.
And if you
So
misspell a name, or if you misspell a
correct.
name by a letter, it's very close, and it'll take you to a porn site.
That's exactly right. But even if you don't misspell, even if you search for an innocent search term in a search engine, you can end up in a porn site almost straight away.
Right.
So the porn industry has colonized our world, colonized culture, colonized the worlds of our young people. And as a result, they think this is how you behave. Boys are being taught a sense of entitlement to the bodies of women and girls. Girls are being seen as just porn fantasy props that have to do what they're told, what is demanded of them. And we're seeing that play out in more coercive controlling behaviors, in more pressure on girls to engage in sex acts they don't want or like, more sexual harassment of girls in schools, girls being groped, girls having jokes made about their bodies, girls being demanded to send sexual images, sexual pictures, and being punished if they don't. And so, yes, I agree, parents have to have an important role to play here, but it's very difficult for parents to compete with the saturation, the mass social saturation and conditioning by the porn industry.
I want to just come back to a phrase you said earlier that I find very interesting also as a clinician, and it's the idea of the sexual template and warping or affecting a child's sexual template. And so can you just expand on that a little bit? And if you know of any actual studies on this, I'd love to know. Maybe you can send it to me later, because you probably have to check into that. But this is so important. And I'm coming back to this because as a clinician, I deal with a lot of clients that have compulsive sexual behaviors or sex and porn addictions. 85% of them have experienced sexual abuse. And there's often a strong correlation between their early sexual experiences and the type of porn they gravitate to, or their early sexual experiences and how they their attractions and their interests and certain things that turn them on. So I'd like to hear, just expand on that a little bit if you can.
Well, what we've done is we've allowed boys to be aroused by sexual violence. The most common and most popular genres of pornography are the most violent. When an adolescent boy whose sexuality is still developing is aroused by and gets turned on by that kind of pornography, he's going to seek that out more, and he's going to seek that out in real life partners.
Okay.
So what girls are telling me is that boys are behaving more callously towards them. They're more brutal. Having sex isn't about making.
That's a strong word, brutal. Like, what are you hearing?
I have so many girls now telling me, high school girls telling me that, quote unquote, he went for my throat without even asking. He wanted to ejaculate on my face. He wanted to choke me and strangle me. He wanted to pull my hair. These are the signature sex acts in porn.
Yes,
that's where they're learning it from. I don't think a boy automatically thinks, I'm going to strangle this girl. Where does that idea come from?
Yeah.
The porn industry is grooming boys to want to do these things and grooming girls to expect that they should have to enjoy it. Because in porn, women love being violated.
Yeah.
No means yes.
I read a
And
study where in it's about 85% of normal porn, not even like the fringe stuff.
mm,
There's shows violent acts of verbal or physical violence against the woman
correct.
from the man in 90% of the case, and
That's right.
it's a high that you might
It's
correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something like in 80% of the instances the woman's face is neutral or experience pleasure.
I think it's even higher than that.
Maybe okay.
Yeah, it's cited in the book you've got there, the
Oh,
Big
okay.
Porn Inc. book. But certainly the vast majority of women are shown as taking pleasure in degradation.
In
What does
degradation.
that mean for intimate relationships? And choking is on the rise, and that's something I've noticed in the last year. The number of young women that tell me about uh, the partner expecting her to want to be strangled and choked. Now, this is, of course, not just from porn directly, but it's also from porn themed movies. For example, 50 Shades of Grey, and now 365 Days, which is the new one. It's sort of an
Heard of
offshoot
that?
of
Yeah.
50 Shades. And it just normalizes coercion and domination and control of women. You know, everything we've been fighting against for years, decades, the women's movement has now been sold to us as empowering and as liberating.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
women
like
and girls are expected to cooperate in this.
yeah, it's like a bunch of guys. It's like all the CEOs of the porn companies got together in a room and said, "Okay, let's list all of the progress women have made in terms of asserting their value as equal human beings, worthy of dignity, etc. Let's
That's
start
right.
smashing all of those one by one."
That's right. And I think they've succeeded, you know.
Yeah.
They've they've embedded new codes of conduct in men and boys. They've inhibited men from integrating empathy into their sexuality, and
Mm,
this is an absolute disaster. We're seeing a
yeah.
rise of coerced anal sex even in younger girls, and I've spoken to girls who have well, I've spoken to medical practitioners who have treated girls who have ended up with colostomy bags, you know, and I don't know how graphic you want me to be, but this is what our young people have a right to know.
Yeah,
You know,
don't
you
hold
don't have,
back. That's okay. I really
yeah,
think I have trigger warnings on all my presentations, so
okay.
go for it. Yeah.
Well, girls are being injured. They're being injured by these violent sexual acts that boys expect to be able to perform on them, and you know it's an absolute tragedy for our young people, for their sexuality, for their relationships. And when boys are saying things to like, I don't get aroused by a real woman now. I get aroused to a computer. So they're learning to be aroused by an inanimate object. And
Mhm.
there's research showing that they're losing the ability to read body language. They're losing
Mm,
face-to-face communications because everything is happening on a screen. They're turned on. They see a computer in a room. They get turned on, and you know this is corrosive to connection. It's destructive of emotional health and well-being, and it's actually making boys who may be lonely even more lonely.
mm.
So you know it's just
So it's destroying sex, in other words. Porn is destroying sex.
destroying sex and destroying love, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it
Well,
may sound
porn kills
cliched,
love,
but
right?
I do believe that, you
Yeah.
know,
It's like the
I
new
do
God
believe that
model.
porn kills love.
Mhm.
And a lot of the girls that I speak to say to me, they don't actually expect love. They don't expect romance. Having sex is certainly not romantic for many of them. And they talk about, you know, being given a pounding. I had a woman, she was in her early 30s, tell me that on dating sites, she lists wanting to stare slow into someone's eyes and make love slowly. She puts it as a fetish because she says otherwise it won't get considered. It has to be seen as something weird, some kind of crazy kink. Otherwise it won't even be considered.
Yeah.
You know, and this is why you know more girls are not even wanting to have sex, and you know I don't blame them.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't blame them. Why would you want that? There's
Yeah.
nothing. appealing or attractive or sensual. There's no sensuality in that kind of sex.
Well, and the thing is that, you know, when you're 15, 16, you have no perspective on life. Like, you have no
Yes,
experience,
that's
no
right.
frame of reference, nothing to measure it by. And
That's
when
right.
everything that you see or read or hear or watch is kind of giving you the same message,
Yes.
I guess, how do we expect them to think any differently? Which is why I think what you do is so amazing, because, you know, you may be the first sane voice of reason that some of these people have heard, right? And I've talked to particularly women under 30. Many have said to me, Paul, I don't even know a guy that doesn't watch porn.
No.
You know, or I'll say, you know, that you don't have to accept porn in your relationship. Like, you can have a zero tolerance policy for that. And they're, well, who am I going to date? I don't know anyone.
That's right.
And I'm
That's
just shaking
right.
my head, like, really?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of women say that to me as well, and tragically, they've pretty much given up. What we're seeing here is a sexual stunting of a generation. This has not happened before. The
Hmm.
fact that boys can stay up all night viewing porn, hours and hours and hours, and cutting themselves off from life-giving activities and behaviors, that's not, they can't have a healthy sexuality as a result of that. It's diminishing their own humanity. Like, if you want to look at it from a self-interested point, you're diminishing your own humanity. I've interviewed a number of young men who were chronic porn users from the age of 8 or 9. One is
Oh,
now 18, and he has stopped consuming. And he said, I didn't recognize myself anymore. He said, I cut myself off from my family. He had a loving family. He said, I stopped playing sport. He said, all I wanted to do was get to my computer. I didn't want to do anything else. He said that his schooling suffered, and he also said that he recognized that he was mentally undressing every girl, every woman in his mind, every girl and woman that he met. And he was disgusted by himself, because he still had a bit of an ethical core, that wasn't totally destroyed yet. And he said the big thing that stopped him consuming was that he recognized that he had become a patron of a global industry that was engaged in, trafficking women into porn. You can't tell what's, traffic-free porn or consent porn or, real choice.
yeah. You don't even know the ages of the people in the.
Don't know the ages. And, we found underage girls on Pornhub. Their videos have been used. Girls who were raped and were unconscious or semi-conscious videos on Pornhub. So he recognized he'd become part of this global system that treated women like this, and he just didn't want to do that anymore. So boys need to be helped to recognize that this is going to harm them as human beings, and set them up for failure in terms of sustaining intimate long-term partnerships.
What, Melinda, what are you hearing from firsthand from the students? Let's say first middle school and then the high school ages. What are first of all, what are the girls telling you? Like walk me through the day-to-day life of a typical 16-year-old high school girl that's, let's say semi-popular, semi-good looking.
Well, I'd love to do that, because that's really my passion, is exposing what girls are suffering every day. I'm just digging out a summary here in my notes. Girls describe really living in a sexually intrusive world, a world of sexual intrusion. They talk about at school, they just say it's normal, it's common to be sexually harassed at school. This would be the
verbally,
experience,
like being grabbed,
verbally,
or okay.
Verbal sexual harassment, or on the school bus on the way home. Now, one school that I knew of had to sexually segregate the school buses, because the girls refused to get on the bus to ride home with the boys, because the level of harassment was so great the groping, the unwanted touching, the demands for sexual pictures, or having photos taken surreptitiously up their skirts. They just wanted to go home on their own bus.
What's the driver doing?
Well, a lot of these things can happen, at the back of the bus. I mean, that's another question, exactly. But the problem was so bad, I'm not even sure the driver can control it when you've
Well,
got
I guess the proper
mass
answer
groups
is
of
the
boys
driver is
acting like
driving the
this.
bus, right?
Yes,
So I mean,
yes,
it's not their job to police the students, but I'm just,
that's right.
wow.
Girls would also tell me about being ranked at school on their bodies compared to the bodies of porn stars. So girls would be given a ranking, and then that would be shared by boys on social media. I have,
So they say like Lucy's a 10 compared
yeah,
to such and
yeah,
such a, or she.
that's right. And imagine the girls with the lowest rankings, how they would feel, as well as the girls with the highest rankings. I mean, it's degrading and debasing any way you look at it.
Right.
They tell me about having their bums grabbed or their breasts touched as they go through crowded corridors every single day, boys rubbing their genitals against them in the corridors, being asked for oral sex by boys during recess or lunch. They talk about being called a snitch, frigid, or a dog if they speak up or complain about any of these things. Even rape jokes being made in front of girls who are known as rape survivors. Messages appearing on social media when you get home saying, quote, "Your ass looks so good today," or negative or insulting comments about sexual features or threats to rape you. There's some of the experiences from girls. And when I speak to them, they realize that this is sexual harassment. It's actually illegal. They don't often realize this is illegal because they've become so used to it. It's become so much part of their normal days. Demands for sexual images is a big one. And I rarely meet a girl who hasn't been asked to or pressured to send a sexual picture. Boys also sending girls pictures that girls haven't asked for. So even really young girls, say 12 years old, 13 years old, are receiving dick pics on their phones, which in Australia is also illegal. It's a form of sexual harassment. Again, a lot of girls don't know that. They think they just need to put up with it.
Yeah.
So terrible pressures. How are they supposed to learn? How are they supposed to enjoy their education? How are they supposed to flourish in school?
And this isn't like once a month.
Their normal environment.
This isn't once a month or once a year. This is weekly, daily?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Wow. That's even worse than I thought, Melinda. I mean, I follow some of your, stories on social media and articles, and
Yes.
so I'm probably more aware than the average person, but that's even beyond.
I summarized a lot of these experiences in a piece for the ABC called "Growing Up in Pornland, Girls Have Had It with Porn-Conditioned Boys." And that piece really attracted a lot of interest because it wasn't well known, how big the problem was. So girls often express to me relief that their problems have been named, the pressures they're under have been named. Oh, another big one is wolf whistling, catcalling.
Oh.
I've had girls tell me they've been catcalled, every day of their lives from the age of 9. That's a common experience as well. So the girls will be relieved. Often they will be crying in tears. And the best part is seeing them equipped and empowered to say, that's it, to draw a line under it. We're not going to put up with this. We're going to confront the boys, or we're going to tell a trusted adult about this behavior, or they'll quietly tell me about their concerns for a friend who's going through the same thing and they want to be able to help their friend. Now, the experience with boys is interesting. I've noticed somewhat of a shift in the last year.
Okay.
I would get a lot more aggression and a lot more opposition to my message from boys. But I think more boys now are realizing that this is hurting them as well. And I have boys actually confessing crimes to me, which is, this mandatory reporting here. So, but they'll say to me, I've done those things. I've coerced girls to do things they didn't want to do. I've demanded the pictures. I've groped them. I've taken advantage of women who were drunk, and they're actually wanting to confess this and for want of a better word, atone and sort of redeem themselves by getting involved with Collective Shout, by apologizing to the girls. I've had some profound experiences where I was addressing a group of year 11 boys in South Australia, and one boy just stood up suddenly and interrupted. And at first I thought, oh, that's a bit rude. What's he doing? He said, I just have to stop you because I want to apologize to every girl in the room today for how I've treated them.
Wow.
And the place just went nuts.
That's
The
powerful.
girls were crying, the boys were really moved.
Wow.
I've had more boys confront their peers in the classroom. So peers might be laughing at some of my slides where I'm talking about violence. And I had one young man in Tasmania stand up with tears in his eyes, and he said, how dare you laugh about this? This is serious.
Wow.
What happened to someone you love? How dare you? He was
Yeah.
only 16 or 17. And it's boys like that that break out of the pack, that break out of the toxic masculinity conditioning of the culture and of porn, and say, we're not going to be like that. Even if we get bullied, even if we get ostracized, even if we get picked on, we want to be decent young men. We want to be young men of integrity, and we're not going to go along with that anymore. So I've been encouraged to see more boys now wanting to work with us, wanting to join our campaigns, wanting to stand up for young women, because they recognize that, we're all in this together, and that they can't afford to allow the porn industry to dictate and shape their sexuality.
Mhm. It sounds like it's almost everything you mention is from boys directed to girls. Is there anything that boys talk about, like maybe they get unsolicited pictures from girls, or
Yes.
get threatened by girls if they don't do something, or is that,
So
or is
not
that
so
just
much,
not?
I don't hear, like, it's not the same kind of violent type expressions that girls tell me.
Yeah.
It's not the girls being aggressive in the same way. However, there have been instances of boys telling me that they have received unsolicited pictures from girls. We have to recognize that girls are products of the culture as well, and
Mhm.
are being shaped and molded and socialized to think that they need to behave like this.
Yeah.
They've also been given a false message about empowerment, which is, if you behave as badly as boys have, then that'll make you equal,
Yeah.
rather than
It
us all
does not.
agreeing this
Yeah.
behavior is wrong. Whoever's doing it, let's get rid of it. Let's abolish it.
Yeah.
So tragically, girls are living in a culture that rewards exhibitionism.
Right.
They see
Like
certain
selfie
bodies.
culture, kind of, or
Yeah, so the selfie culture, they're seeing it on Instagram. They're seeing certain bodies that are praised and rewarded.
mm,
They experience terrible levels of body shaming if they don't fit a norm that usually, corporates and big business and industries have decided should be the norm.
right.
People that are usually out to make money
Yeah.
by preying on especially the angst of adolescent girls.
Hmm.
So girls are acting out what they've been taught and socialized into as well. So sometimes they do behave badly to the boys, and that needs to be sort of addressed and deconstructed as well.
Yeah. Can you explain what revenge porn is, and sextortion?
Yes.
What that means?
This is where, for example, a guy might pressure a girl to send an image, and often they're underage girls, their brains are still developing. They don't have the cognitive ability to recognize consequences, and often everyone around them doing it, and they think, oh, look, maybe he likes me. They think there's more to it than there actually is. They don't always understand that he's
Yeah.
got a vast collection of images from girls, and he's just sharing it with his mates. And anyway, so she might send one picture that's a bit suggestive, and then he says, send me more, or I'm going to tell your family, or I'm going to tell everyone at school. And that causes her to panic, and tragically often will send more. And it's not just in adolescent relationships, it happens in adult relationships. Well, you can't even call it a relationship, really. It happens between adults
Yeah.
as well.
So that's the sextortion piece.
Yeah, and also, of course, strangers doing it, predators on Instagram. We have a huge campaign called Wake Up Instagram, a
Mm,
global campaign. And we've exposed hundreds and hundreds of predators on Instagram trying to
wow.
post sexualized comments, trying to contact the girls privately, saying what they want to do to the girls, and requesting images. And
Mm,
so if a vulnerable girl sends one of those predators that she doesn't recognize as a predator, an image, because often they masquerade as 16-year-old boys and they're
right.
60-year-old men, you know. So she may send one picture, then he demands more or threatens to publish that picture, to post it, to tell everyone she knows, to tell all her friends,
Okay.
and he can use that. Revenge porn also includes, revenge porn is slightly different in that revenge porn can involve intimate relationships that were ongoing, and where the relationship ends and the partner is wanting to get back at her. So he shares her images, which she did not consent to. So she may have consented because it was a trusted, intimate relationship,
Mhm.
but then he punishes her by sharing her images publicly.
I heard a story from was a client actually who was I think about 16, and this happened in his high school. So this girl broke up with her boyfriend,
Mm,
and he had some pictures of her,
mm,
nude or semi-nude.
mm.
So it's called an airdrop. So if you have an
Yeah,
iPhone and um, you're near me like 20 feet away, and
yeah,
I select a photo and I hit airdrop, and it goes to everybody within 20 feet of me.
yes, I
And
know.
he told me that.
Everyone gets it.
I was like, what,
Yeah,
really? He's like, oh
yeah,
yeah. And he doesn't even seem phased, just like, yeah, this is just another day at school.
that's
Then I'm
right.
thinking, what if she gets shamed and bullied,
Oh,
and
she
those
will.
people end up committing suicide?
They do. Girls have ended up taking their lives when they realize those images are out there forever,
Yeah,
and that those images end up on porn sites. Has been documented by Internet Watch Foundation. Girls aren't thinking this. They're not thinking this is where my image could end up if I
yeah,
share it. But then, of course, with revenge porn, it's shared anyway, even when it may have originally been taken consensually. So it's just not safe to share images. That's kind of my bottom line. And it may sound extreme, but I've talked to too many women and girls whose
I
images
agree.
have ended up in places that they never considered. They never thought this would happen to them. It's
Yeah,
affected their education. It's affected their ability to get a job. And those pictures circulate forever. You can't get rid of them. There's no 1-800 number to ring to get your pictures down.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't even think like married couples should be sending naked pictures of themselves to each other, because you don't know if you send a picture of yourself and your husband's buddy grabs the phone when it comes through, and he grabs it and he does a screenshot and sends it to himself, and he thinks it's a big joke, and next thing you know, you're on the internet.
Exactly. Or the phone gets stolen
This
or
is not
lost
smart.
or hacked.
Yeah,
Hacking is a huge problem. We've seen celebrities' intimate pictures get hacked from the cloud. We can't be so naive to think
yeah,
this won't happen
yeah.
in our own lives.
Melinda, is there anything, you've been doing this quite a long time now. Is there
Mm.
anything that shocks or surprises you, or have you become unshockable? Because I always tell my clients, listen,
Yeah.
you're not going to shock me, so just tell me what's going on. And yeah, but every once in a while, I kind of go,
Yeah.
okay, really,
I
yeah,
think the age at which the harms are being enacted are becoming younger. I still find that distressing. When I'm in a primary school and I've got all these little kids in a room, and then in question time they'll ask, what do I do about the boys that are touching me in the wrong place at school? Or girls disclosing sexual acts being done to them, and they're young. when you've got little girls showing you on their phones the dick pics they've had that day at school,
And
these
these are like
sweet
10,
little
12-year-olds.
faces that ask me, for example, if he stalks me, does that mean he really likes me? Because they've all seen 50 Shades of Grey at 12 or 13. So we've taught them that stalking is an act of romance. What a disaster that is, that they
What a
think that's
disaster,
it's
yeah.
like an act of passion, you
Oh,
know. So again, warping their ideas of relationships, their bodies, sexuality, what they're good for. That still troubles me. I remember a teenage girl said that a boy said to her, if you give me oral sex, I'll give you a kiss. So they're paying for these tokens of romance with sexual acts that often have been learnt from pornography. I had a 15-year-old girl say to me, on a Friday night, I really like to watch a movie with my boyfriend, but I get sex out of the way early, otherwise he'll be harassing me all through the movie, and I just want to settle down and watch the film. So we have sex first, so then he'll watch the film with me.
right.
So this is the new dating experience of so many girls, and the expectations on them does disturb me. And as we started off earlier, thinking that it's radical to say no, like this is like this radical revelation. I'm allowed to say no and not be punished for it, not feel bad about it. How did it come to this? That would be seen as a radical action, a radical countercultural action
Right.
to take. That tells us a lot, doesn't it?
It does, and it kind of leads me to my next question. What do you think, teachers, parents, mental health? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's too big of a question. Let's say, well, let's start with teachers, and then we'll talk about parents and mental health professionals,
Yes.
as much as you're able to speak to that. But I
Yes.
imagine teachers are kind of in this, because I'm trying to picture myself. Okay, let's say I'm a teacher and I'm listening to you. Okay, and I'm thinking,
Yes.
well, I'm not the kid's parent. What if this happens outside school grounds?
Yes.
Or they send and receive these pictures on the weekend, and then they bring them to school, and I'm just
Yes.
trying to get through the day and teach my class here. I'm not here.
That's right. I really feel for teachers. I really feel for teachers. They're confronting issues in the educational setting that even 5 or 10 years ago, teachers weren't having to confront to this degree. So what we need, Paul, is a whole of community approach. Teachers can't do it on their own. Parents can't do it on their own. Caregivers, mental health professionals. This has to be a whole of community agreement. Otherwise, we won't succeed. So with teachers, I'll show them the research, the academic literature, to show them there's a solid evidence base for recognizing the harms and then acting on it. So I'll start with the research. Then I'll talk about the duty of care that schools have to create a safe educational environment. If boys are accessing porn at school and then hassling girls, that is a denial of duty of care. That's a failure of duty of care. So there needs to be a porn-free zone at school, preferably no phones. That's harder to achieve. We've had 2 states here in Australia ban phones in schools, and it's changed the ability of the kids in their behavior, their focus, their concentration. They're less stressed, they're less anxious.
Yeah.
So some of our mental health professionals here that I work with have helped to push that, particularly in primary schools. Kids don't need internet-enabled devices in primary schools.
No.
Like really, you're giving them a hand grenade.
Right.
And then having the support of the school to address it. The school needs to have strong policies here. Is it 1 strike and you're out? Is it 3 strikes and you're out? Often boys are looking at porn on their laptops in the classroom. They'll sit at the back and and here's the other thing that schools need to be aware of. They may have every filtering device known to humankind. They may have filtering in the library, on the computers. What kids are doing, certainly here in Australia, is putting all the porn on a USB stick and putting the stick into the laptop.
Yeah.
Even in the classroom.
Right.
So that schools need to be vigilant about this. And anyone consuming porn at school needs to know that this is unacceptable. This is not what we do at school.
Right.
If images are being shared around at school, that's also needs to be zero tolerance on that. So the schools have got to be firm about it. You know, this is a public health crisis we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And we can't go softly. We
Well,
can't.
we don't hand out cigarettes at the door to 16-year-olds and then give them a light in class, do we?
Tell them it's their choice. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, given the societal impacts, given the impacts especially on our vulnerable young people and their developing sexual templates, schools have to take a really strong line on this. And for parents, if the school isn't, you might want to look at another school, because your kids are going to be harmed if the school isn't on board with this.
Yeah. Do you find, Melinda, in Australia there, and I don't know how many psychologists and therapists you interact with, but do you find they're generally very knowledgeable about this? Because in Canada, I don't find that we are as much as other places.
Look, it's variable, you know, because I've had women tell me that they've gone to see a psychologist with their porn consuming partner, and the psychologist has told her, it's your fault, you've got to relax, this is what men do.
Oh.
Try drinking alcohol before sex, get that monkey off your back that tells you there's something wrong with this. So unfortunately, the woman has been blamed because she doesn't want to go along with.
Traumatized, actually.
And traumatized.
Re-traumatized.
Re-traumatized, exactly, by psychologists and counselors who reinforce the male's behavior and ignore her trauma, her grief, her feeling that she's being cheated on, her feelings of total inadequacy. And harms to the family, harms to the children. Sometimes there's consumption in front of the children, or the boys are being introduced to porn by a father. So having said that, there are other psychologists who do recognize this is harmful, and will help the couple to work through that and help affirm the woman the partner for how she feels about it. But there's very few that I would refer to, that I would be confident in, that would, you know, share my views, my approach to this issue. You have to
vet them out, sort of, and be careful about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Fortunately, we have had the Australian Medical Association in Australia, the former president, speak out against pornography and the harms of porn, especially to young people. So that was really helpful.
Yeah.
We've also had some good research about sexualization of children come out of the Australian Psychological Association, the American Psychological Association, of course. Yeah. I think we are seeing a bit of a shift, because when I first started out full-time on this issue a decade ago, there wasn't a lot of recognition of the harms of porn, even the harms of sexualizing children. But now we're not criticized as much for our views, because the research now is so solid, the global evidence is so solid on this, and also schools and parents are seeing the impacts. Like, it's undeniable now. When you're seeing a rise of child-on-child sexual assault at rates never before seen, predator copycat behavior, children acting out on other children, what they've seen, what they've been exposed to, you know, you can't deny that. And again, the kids haven't thought of this themselves. You know, they've learnt this, they've been taught this, and now they're acting it out on other children. And this is where we have to draw the links between porn and porn culture and violence against women, because, as I've already said, attitudes shape behaviour. And if you educate primarily boys that women exist for your sexual gratification and pleasure, and you should be able to do whatever you want to them, of course we're going to see more violence, more coercive control, more domination, more sexual harassment. We've allowed the development of the culture which fuels sexual harassment, which makes sexual harassment inevitable. Like, none of this is a mystery to me. This is a
logical outcome.
And a logical outcome is the exact phrase I was looking for. A logical outcome to the embedding of porn norms in the culture at every level.
Right. Do you feel so a couple of phrases and just your reaction. And I came across this at the Nicosi conference. Good talk, by the way. Oh, and I want you to just share
Oh,
real briefly about the whole child sex doll thing, and then before
yes,
we wrap up. But culture of secrecy, culture of denial.
yes.
And the thing is, I speak a little bit, nothing near what you do, but I've been to schools, I've spoken at
Mm,
conferences and different, workshops and stuff. And it's
mm,
sort of like, um, okay, so let's say I speak to a group of 100 people.
mm,
Probably half of them watch porn,
mm.
maybe
Yeah,
not
at least.
problematically, or
Mm,
maybe they don't meet the criteria for a compulsion. Okay.
yes,
But they do. Maybe they've
yeah.
watched some very degrading and abusive and violent porn, or they see nothing wrong with it. And there's a whole branch in mental health, like, called sexologists, I guess. And
Mm,
they're like anything goes kind of thing, So I think when we speak up, isn't it like, it's such an interesting topic, and I always wonder. And I always preface my comments like, this isn't a moral, religious, judgmental thing. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your sexuality, or what's wrong or right. But
mm.
it's sort of, this is what's happening in the world, and this is the evidence, right? But
Yeah.
I think it triggers and shames people. And is there a long-standing cultural undercurrent of sexual shame that we're dealing with underneath all of this? I don't know if I said, do you kind of get what I'm trying to say?
Look, I do, and I'm a little bit conflicted on the shame thing, because
Okay.
I do agree that if we take a shame-based approach, boys will end up not talking about it, not getting the help they need, not making themselves accountable, and ending up in worse places. However, I still think there's a role for shame,
Hmm.
because I think, there should be shame. If you're getting off on depictions of women who are being degraded, who are being spat at, who are being choked, who are being, multiply gang banged,
Yeah.
if you
That's
get off
shameful
on
behavior.
some of the genres that I've had to expose myself to, like the Nazi and Holocaust genres of porn, of women being violated in depictions of concentration camps, right? I reckon there should be some shame around that.
Could
You
be
know,
ashamed of yourself.
I
Yeah.
know it's not a popular view,
Yeah. Yeah.
but isn't there a role? Can't there be a role for shame in terms of prompting or reawakening the conscience,
Hmm.
which may have been dulled as a result of ongoing long-term consumption? If there's still a little bit of shame, maybe that means there's still something to work with, that it
Hmm.
hasn't been totally knocked out.
Hmm.
So, I'm kind of having a little bit both ways here. I don't think we
Yeah.
can take an entirely shame-based approach, or the kids won't talk to us.
Hmm.
Uh, Whoever's struggling won't. However, there should be some shame. If you're masturbating to images of extreme torture, cruelty, degradation, rape porn, sadism porn, if you're
Yeah.
getting off on incest-themed porn,
Yeah.
yes, I think there's a place for shame here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a part of me, and as I'm a fairly compassionate therapist, there's a part of me that wants to slap him and say, "What the hell's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had that urge many times, right?
I probably wouldn't confess to it, but
Yeah. Okay. No, it's right. We'll
I'm
edit that.
probably
We'll
more.
edit
I
that
try
out
to
of the
be.
interview, right?
Yeah, no. Look, I try to reserve my anger for the industry, which is
Mhm.
preying on our young men from the earliest of ages, from
Yes.
children.
Yeah.
That's where my anger lies, and the
Yeah.
deformation of authentic intimacy, sensuality, relationships, ethics. Ethics in sexuality, all of those things.
Hmm.
Draw my anger and fuel what I do.
Yeah. So do you feel, a couple more, we'll wrap up, and I want to hear about the Alibaba,
Mm.
the Alibaba incident, let's call it.
It'd be good to add on. It would be good to end on a victory for sure.
We want to end on that, but do you
Yeah.
feel, um, you're making a difference. I'm pretty sure you're going to say yes, but do you feel like you're, despite everything you do, it's like bailing out the Titanic with a sand pail? Have we lost this generation?
I can't afford to think that, or I couldn't get out of bed in the morning, Paul. I couldn't
Yes.
turn up at all these schools. I couldn't spend hours doing the research and putting the talks together, reviewing the evidence base. I just couldn't show up if I believed it was a lost cause. You know,
Yeah.
having said that, believe me, I do have my dark days.
Yeah.
Uh, I do, but I have a great team around me. I debrief every day, and I do see signs of hope, especially in my interactions with young people and what they tell me. And we do have victories. So Collective Shout, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary now. We're 10 years old. And
Awesome.
it's really me and a small team. You know, it's really
Yeah,
me and a
just
small
4 of you,
team.
right? Or 5 of you?
Yeah, 4 at the moment.
Yeah.
One's on maternity leave.
Okay.
And, you know, we take it up to global corporations. We call it out. You know, our North American friends say they love us because they'll play the good cop and we'll always play the bad cop. You know, we'll name the names. We'll tag the CEOs. We'll plaster their photos on Twitter. And we did this with Alibaba.
Yeah, tell us the Alibaba incident.
Yeah, well, we found large numbers of replica children, child sex dolls, infants, babies, lifelike babies, for
Right.
God's sake. You know,
Clear, these are dolls, and these aren't dolls. These are dolls designed to sexually act out on.
well, they're advertised as having 3 holes for your enjoyment,
Oh.
right? So it's pretty clear, like this isn't something that, you know, we're taking a punt on, we're taking a guess at.
Yeah.
And these sex dolls were being marketed and sold through 23 sellers using the Alibaba platform. And so we called it out. We said, how can a corporate, this in the top 10 most wealthy corporates in the world, profit from eroticizing and fetishizing child sexual abuse,
Yeah.
even toddlers, even babies?
Mm-hmm.
Because we showed an interest as part of our research, we were being sent videos of naked babies to modeling the dolls, the naked baby dolls. And that's content I actually wish I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to recover from that. And so we called out Alibaba, and it was a 2-week campaign, and Alibaba has removed those dolls and is tightening up its policies and procedures, its due diligence, its compliance to try to stop this happening again. And that was because people supported us. Like, this campaign really took off globally. We had massive media in multiple languages.
It's not that hard to get behind removing child sex abuse dolls. Like,
this one really, really resonated.
You're going to get a lot of pushback from people on that, right?
Well, some still justified it, but the majority seem to be with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a great win just last week.
So you directly approached the executives, and within 2 weeks they had discontinued the sale of this doll. And was there an explanation, like it just, sorry, it slipped through the cracks, like we can't?
That's what they said, but we didn't accept that because this is actually the 3rd time it's happened. They were called out in 2018 and in January of this year.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yes. And then we came in.
Right.
The 3rd time.
We brought in the heavy hitters.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So
all right, we tried.
We went in very hard.
Get Collective Shout on the phone. Yeah. It's time to pull up.
That's it. That's right. So yeah, we took it up to the heads of the company, and also there's a representative in Australia, New Zealand, who is quite well known because she's the daughter of a former Prime Minister. Okay. And she's Alibaba's lifestyle representative for Australia, New Zealand. So we got onto her, and that's when we really saw a shift with that campaign. So a lot of our work is grassroots activism and campaigning, as well as higher end advocacy, lobbying, submissions to government. And we've built this grassroots movement over a 10-year period, calling for social change, cultural transformation, sexualization, objectification, porn culture, trafficking, violence against women. All these things are interlinked. And that's been something we've really pushed is the interlinkages. You can't address one on its own. They all feed and fuel each other.
Yeah, and again, that the book Big Porn brilliantly shows that through the research, and the academic evidence is really indisputable about how it really is
Yes,
all connected. So a real
yes.
eye opener. Recommend again for everyone to get that. I think we'll wrap up, Melinda. One last question. You know, what's a challenge? And I gave you an hour to think about this, you know, because I warned
Yes,
you at the beginning.
you
But
did.
a challenge, or I don't know if advice is a no. Let's go with challenge. Okay, so
Mhm.
a lot of people watching this are frontline workers, and what would be something they can do to help tackle this issue?
Well, again, it's great you've even got this workshop happening at such a significant event. I think to be aware, to be informed, to be across the research, or at least summaries of the research, so you can be confident to know that this is harmful to health and well-being, psychological, mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health. You know, just get across the research and address it in your clinical practices, and don't allow the consumer to make excuses for his behavior, his mistreatment of a partner. Don't play down a partner's concerns, how she feels. Sorry, I'm primarily saying she. That's mostly been my
Well,
experience.
that's usually how it is.
Yeah, and don't minimize her concerns. You know, affirm her for how she feels about this. And
Mm,
you know, I actually think women need to be encouraged to end the relationship, and I know that's not an easy thing to do. But if he's refusing to change, I mean, I talk to women who have endured this for 10 years, 20 years. It's destroyed
that's
her, it's
awesome.
destroyed the children, and he's
Yeah,
still insisting on using, and that it's not a problem. You know,
yeah,
I think there's a time to encourage her to get out of that,
yeah,
relationship. You
yeah.
know, why should she be sacrificed to save the marriage? And what does
Mm,
that marriage look like anyway? What are you actually saving?
yes.
So
Yeah,
they're just a few things that I would suggest. And of course, your own self-care as well. When you're hearing these stories, they can be very traumatic.
yeah.
So looking after yourself as well, to state the obvious.
Good. Yes. Thanks for that. Those suggestions and that insight. So we'll wrap it up here.
Hmm.
And thank you again so much for taking your time to share with me. And you know, when I talk and share and speak and do my trainings, it's like I can take you with me now. And so I'm really
Oh,
happy
yeah,
for
it's
that.
great.
And share your expertise with the world, because I think it's
Yeah.
hard fought and hard won and very valuable. And
Thank you,
more
Paul.
people need to hear this message. So thanks
Thank you,
again,
Paul.
Melinda. Yeah, and
Thank you for the opportunity to reach so many Canadian psychologists and others that you work with. It's a great opportunity for me as well. Thank you so much.
okay, all the best, and you take care and stay in touch.
Thanks, Paul. You too.